Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Quiz Marketing Podcast. My name is Josh Hanem. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Interact Quizmaker. Today, I'm joined by Shannon, who is the CEO and founder of the Social Bungalow. And she's got a really cool quiz set up. I was genuinely curious to know how exactly she's using it across social media and other platforms. So excited to chat about this. Thanks for being here, Shannon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into the details.
Yeah, so I'll start where I always start, which is what kind of business impact has this quiz and the automations you built around it had on your company?
I've used it mostly as a lead magnet inside of a launch, just kind of ramp up style. And it's afforded me not only the data from my clients, which is invaluable, but also them being able to get further indoctrinated with segmented specificity around exactly what the symptoms and problems are in their business, thus teeing up the conversion for my offer so effortlessly because they're so bought into how specifically this is going to serve them.
That's great. That's great. So where did the idea initially come from?
I think I just always wanted to do a quiz. It was a couple of years ago that I did my first one, and I had just listened to an Amy Porterfield launch debrief of her annual Digital Course Academy. Wanted to see if there was any good nuggets there, and she was talking a lot about Hello Audio, which is a private podcast software. And I thought, ooh, being able to test out a private podcast would be great because I don't have a public facing one, but I think that's a great medium for me. But I don't know if I just release a public podcast or private podcast that that's going to go well. So what if I put it behind a quiz? And then I tailored episodes to their results to go deeper on the specific findings. So it started as this kind of double dip situation where the quiz was an intake for podcast solution. But from there, I've continued to use them in that manner and otherwise, and it's gone really well.
That's really cool. That's I like that it's like from the beginning, it's like purpose driven to be around a quiz. It's like you're using that power of personalization from the start, and you started with the actual personalized content and then almost worked backwards to create the quiz. So then working backwards, where is this being shown to people? How are they finding out about it in your audience?
Mostly just my own promotion on social, on my website via email, but then we put some ads behind it too, both direct to the quiz opt in page and with content that was promoting the quiz with a little integration from ManyChat. So comment the word quiz and we'll get you immediate access to it style. Um, and then I had some people shouting it out, just sort of affiliate partners.
Very nice. And how did you know like what kind of hook for the quiz would resonate with people? What kind of title would you actually get people to take the bait?
I come from marketing and my company teaches marketing. So I would say there was a natural skill set at play. So just for anybody listening, that was a part of it. But the things that you could do to figure that out would be a bit of that market research, understanding what gets your people going and what the main problem is that you want your quiz to then solve for them or reveal to them. And then the thing that's been interesting for me is playing around with a negative or a positive hook. So revealing this positive persona or positive result. What's your superpower style? Versus what's your blocker, what's your issue, telltale symptoms. And I find even though a lot of times people would say like go for positive, everybody loves that persona reveal. It's kind of getting back to the day of BuzzFeed's which Avenger are you, which, breakfast taco are you. But the one that converts better is what's the problem? What is that thing that's standing in your way that we need to bust through so that this can actually work?
Yep. That shifted in like the last few years. I don't know, how long has yours been running?
2022.
Yeah, that's probably right around when it started to shift. I don't know what happened in the air or whatever, but everyone was like, I don't want your positivity anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know what's wrong with me. It's crazy. Like almost every conversation I've had about positive, negative hooks goes negative in the last like few years. So
Wow.
really fascinating change that's happened there. What's the specific title of your quiz? We'll link it in the comments or the description, but what's the actual concept that ended up being the hook that worked really well for your audience?
The one that comes to mind, because I've done this a couple few times, is the what is your business blind spot? And that then had four M's. It was money, minimalism, marketing, or messaging, something like that. And then the other one that's gone really well was what is your content's missing puzzle piece? And it was either you need more growth content, more nurture content, or more conversion content.
I like that. How did you know those four M's or like the different types of content? Like, And how did you put those into those nice, neat little buckets? Because that's where a lot of people struggle.
I always start from the offer. So it's what are my main pillars of transformation within the offer? Like if there are 10 main steps that somebody's going to go through in your program to achieve the outcome, your ability to then group those into maybe some phases or some initial findings. And from the offer, the main solution is you need my offer. So I'm going to pull anything that I want in the ramp up to be from that. So it was ultimately at the time I was selling a offer creation slash business ops style program called Business Expansion Blueprint. And those 4 M's were the 4 M's that you work on within the program. So I wanted to reveal to them through the quiz where their blind spot was so that they had such demand for that one component of the program, of course, but then seeing how all the others play together and you need all of them for successful business allowed them to kind of centralize their focus on their result, but then open up their mind to the rest of them for conversion.
That's really nice. So you have one offer, and then there's like four kind of modules or different things that you can help with. And so you've helped people find the one that's like the most important for them right now.
Yep,
Nice.
exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think people often struggle with like, how do I do this if I only have one offer at the end of this? It's seemingly easier, although I don't know if it's actually easier if you have like four offers and it's nice and neat of like, which one do you need? But I like that you broke this down into kind of the four subsections of it, and then we're able to use that to actually guide people to the right kind of starting point, and then that parlays back into everything else. So
Yeah. Yeah, good point there. Though what you're saying, and I think that that can work too, is more of a top of funnel quiz where it's let's diagnose you and then let's route you so that your leads have a little bit more of a guided journey in your ecosystem versus just expecting them to be autonomous and fall down the right funnel. What I'm saying is I'm only going to be selling this offer, whether I have 20 offers or this is my only offer, I'm launching this one. So I know in a specific period of time, this is going to be the main thing on the table. I'm doing bonuses, I'm doing discounts, I'm doing a 1 week open cart sort of like flash sale. And so with that, this was the ramp up to that offer. And I think both strategies have long legs, some for top of funnel routing and then some for I already know what I'm going to be selling you. So I'm just making sure you feel aligned with that by the time this card opens.
oh, nice. I like that. Thanks for the clarification. That's even another kind of aspect of this I hadn't thought about that you're doing, but that's really cool. You're able to narrow it down to like, I want to push this offer right now, and then within that, I can even break that down into different quiz results and
Right.
use a quiz effectively for that. That's awesome. So you have the four kind of the M's. Let's just go with that one. How do you then work backwards from there to know what questions am I going to ask? And like, questions are so important, right? Because at the end of those questions, you're going to be asking people, to buy something or put in their email address or both. And you really need to make those questions work. How did you figure that out?
I went through a sort of like thinking about my ideal client diagnostics experiment mentally. And I'm writing down like, what are their problems? What are the mistakes they're making in an attempt to solve those problems? What beliefs has this formed? What telltale physical signs do they have, be that in their money or in their client flow or their following? Um, what are some feelings that they might have? And I just started to list everything out. And as I had this big docket of information, I then grouped the telltale signs per result that I already knew I wanted. So, of all these beliefs that they might have, you might have, let's say, if the problem is a lack of minimalism in your business because you've got so many offers and they're all overstuffed and you're overwhelmed trying to facilitate all of them. We need to simplify it. That was what that result was about. So, if I'm looking at my beliefs list, I've got 15 things written down that I just jotted in a brain blast. I'm going to see the beliefs that are a little bit more like, gosh, how am I going to continually manage my business? Or how does this ever get easier? And I'm going to take those and put it to the minimalism option. So I ended up basically with 4 different sheets. And on minimalism, I then had this whole dossier of this is the person who is struggling with the lack of minimalism. And therefore, I'm going to turn these into questions. Now, per question, you have 4 different answers, one of which routes to each result so that it's keeping that score tally for the person taking the quiz. So I needed to then look at all 4 docs and say, in minimalism, in market, in money, in message, where is there a similar question that these answers could all support? So then I would reroute that to a question such as, all right, I'm seeing all these beliefs and internal dialogues that they're having. So I'm going to ask the question of what is like, what's your inner critic saying to you on a weekly basis? And then it's going to say, upholding my business is so overwhelming. Maybe I just need to simplify. And if they click that one, I know it's going to go to lack of minimalism as it routes there. So I reverse engineered it. And I did this in a time where ChatGPT wasn't what it is now. To answer everybody simply, if you're listening to that, like, what the heck was that red string murder board? Go to ChatGPT, feed it information, have it help you create your quiz.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting one with the chat GPT coming on the scenes because what you described, to me, that exemplifies perfectly what good questions are, because you're describing psychographics, like the intangibles of what makes a person a unique human, and then you group them into different categories, and then those become the answers, and then that maps to the results. And in my mind, it's almost like like a really good programmer knows how the programming works. A decent programmer can do the programming but doesn't know how it works. And so I think there actually is a lot of value still in understanding what you just described of like who is in my audience and what are the different traits that come together, because with the chat GPT-ification of everything, even though it can be very helpful, it can sometimes feel like this is somebody like guessing what this is supposed to be. They don't actually understand what it's supposed to be. And so I think both is good sometimes, because we see that on our end. Like we see people that are just doing the chat GPT and it's like it's close, but like almost close where it's worse than if it wasn't close, because it's like
Mhm.
obvious that it's not quite there, but it's close, and so it feels weird. And so I think I really like the way you described it of like write down the interests, write down the beliefs, write down the characteristics, group those all up, turn those into answers, because then it also helps you with the specific wording too, right? So you're not just using like ChatGPT wording, which sounds like very average. It's like, oh, I have a specific word that I like to use to describe this, or my audience refers to themselves in a certain way that is unique and different. And I want to make sure I include that word because it's going to make them feel seen. And that's all, super important to all of this. So that's a slight diatribe, but I like the way that you described that. That was very helpful. And I think for anybody listening, definitely do that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you've seen some of those memes online about ChatGPT, and there's one in particular where there's a model walking the runway for some show, and there's a robot that she's holding hands with, and it's like me and ChatGPT after a great brainstorming session. That's how I would encourage everybody to think about it. Like, you are the model, but ChatGPT is there to brainstorm with you. And after you get these ideas from them or ways of crafting it that sometimes are just so hard to come up with when you're staring at a blinking cursor who's like mocking you on this open document, to get some ideas going and then to humanize it as you go. But I will say, just a quick caveat, because I completely agree with everything that you said, Josh. You have to train your chat GPT to be you, because at this point it is better, it's more clever, and it knows my person better than I do. And I've trained it to be very psychographic. And I go through like this whole process with my students and how to do this so that it can be a real co-strategist, because it'll tell you your person's fear is actually rooted in this trauma that's causing this, and like it will tell me everything, and it'll say they're sitting there and they're in their mind, they're looking in the mirror and they're thinking like, how has another day passed where I haven't done X and I haven't done Y? And I'm like, dang, that is so accurate. And I would have even never thought to get that creepy specific. So if you are using ChatGPT and you're just using it kind of in a here and there superficial way for a lot of different purposes, it's not going to learn you, and it won't learn your business, and it won't learn your person. But if you start to train it and feed it and nurture it, basically like a little Tamagotchi present day, it can be a much more supportive co-strategist.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because that is those intangibles of like the little wording and the little verbiage and the little quips or the idioms that your audience likes. And if it
Mhm.
knows that, and then you ask it to write a question, it's going to be able to use that and be able to talk the way that you want it to talk. So that's a really good point. Any tips for people on how to train it effectively?
I have a bunch of prompts that I've written, so it's hard to say, like, without having a great prompt, what to do. But ultimately, the prompts are related to knowing how to speak to it and telling it, this is the information about my person. And you getting that information from your intake forms, from market research questionnaires, from chatting with your people, from observing them, from looking at forums, depending on how long you've been in business and how much data you do or don't have, your own knowledge on your people, just even writing like an open forum diary entry to your person of, I know you're dealing with this. I know it feels like this, looks like this, sounds like this. I know the quiet whispers of your heart are screaming this and that you would never say it out loud, or you're concerned about your spouse this or your kids that, and the impact of it, like all of this ripple effect of the intangible human experience related to your specialty, and getting that down on paper with a specific prompt to then feed the machine and have it turn it around into, let's call it like a messaging bank with bullet points and what have you. And then for you to nurture and correct and nurture and correct a lot of those points. That's how we start it, to be able to have an understanding, and then getting certain running threads going so you can return to said thread if you need to do anything like this.
Yep. I like that. That's really helpful. And I think you have to go to that level to make it actually useful, because otherwise, like we were kind of starting this conversation, it's very generic and doesn't really sound like anything super interesting. It's like caveat and questions, but I'm curious, we kind of talked about that negative positive flip in terms of the hooks that are working, and that's a trend that we've seen. Any other trends, since you have kind of a front row seat to this, that are happening within marketing? I mean, there's a lot going on right now between the TikTok stuff and social algorithms. What are the kind of marketing trends overall? And then if that ties back to your quiz strategy at all, how does it do that?
I think that marketing really works in pendulums, and it's a blissful period when you're in the middle of the pendulum, where a little bit of the negative, a little bit of the positive, let's say, both work, but that it tends to swing hard. And if we go back to COVID, where we had so many people coming online and the market got really saturated, it created a burst in, because it was so front running, a burst in understanding on how the internet and online business and different things of this sort worked. So our consumer is far more sophisticated now, 5 years later, than they were when COVID took place, let's say. Everybody has been forced to take a quiz or attend a master class, and now they know the tricks, basically. And so with a more sophisticated consumer over the last few years, they are like, I don't want to hear your buzzword laden basics. I don't want to attend the same old pomp and circumstance thing. I want something that's different, that's unique, that has a touch point, that feels like it's from a human, and that I'm being independently seen, versus it just being another resource that's going to go collect dust in my graveyard. So with that in 2020, and with so much saturation, there's more competition than ever before, and standing out is harder. So an easy way to do so is by having a little bit more of an intimate connection with your leads, by knowing them so well in your messaging, by chatting with them, by trying to simplify your business versus trying to do all the things, have all the tactics, have all the offers. I'm finding a return to simplicity is working well, because then it's allowed to be a little more bespoke and a little more tailored. So if you were to have a quiz on in front of a little bit more of a simplified business, your opportunity to get their results and then have a custom series of emails, the emails that even prompt them to reply a word to chat with you, or to come and DM you somewhere else to chat a little further, and get some sort of access to the business owner or a team member to begin to chat this through. And then there's more of a custom consult vibe that's working on the back end, not to return to overtly analog or manual practices, but that is a breath of fresh air, with everybody knowing the tricks from sophistication and having so many options from saturation. Being a bit more intimate with your leads is working really well.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, because it was almost like taboo to tell people, oh, you should talk to your customers for a few years there. It was like, oh, what are you doing? Your business must be terrible if you have to
Mm-hmm.
talk to your customers. And then now it's like, it is a pendulum. It's like it's kind of swung back the other way, where you have these like, you know, LinkedIn influencers or whatever influencers talking about like, oh, I talk to all my customers and all my automations are manual now. And you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would imagine that like the answer has to be somewhere in the middle, especially for a business that's like your size. You can't actually talk to everybody,
Yep.
but like having, and I wonder, that's kind of one of the use cases for quizzes too, is like filtering the people that are coming through, where it's like, I don't personally have time to talk to everybody, but like of the people that are willing to plop down a certain amount of money, of course, and I want to know who those people are. And so being able to filter more effectively and segment more effectively is also really important. Anything else that you're seeing as kind of like a overarching trend, or within the platforms, like things that have changed? I know a lot has changed since 2020, but um, what else are you seeing?
Maybe route me because I help specifically female entrepreneurs with online based businesses. So they are only selling like group programs, courses, one-on-one coaching and or service providing. So in that bubble, I could get into maybe something specifically that we're seeing on Instagram because that's a huge place in which they chat with their leads and they typically are also women serving women. So it connection, relationship building, that goes a long way. But I don't know if that's the larger scope of your audience. And I'm so deeply ingratiated with my people that that's where my head is.
No, I mean we have a lot of overlap in that market too. So I'm curious to know what you're seeing.
Okay. I would say something that's working really well right now in the way that we're structuring content is the gap reveal. And this isn't necessarily something too new in marketing, but it is per the pendulum conversation, a testament to we were over inundated with educational content back, let's say 2018 to 2021. And it was great because it was proving that you were no fluff and you had great quality. People had more time to consume and they were. And now everybody being more educated, having ChatGPT and having more information than ever before, they're when you educate them, let's say in your just free content, it's supportive because it shows your expertise and maybe gives them a little quick win, but it's just not appreciated like a breakthrough or a perspective shift is. Sorry.
No
And so
worries.
with that, with a perspective shift, with a breakthrough, the opportunity for you to say, here's a juicy hook of, are you dealing with this? Are you thinking this? Are you wanting this? And then you click on it. Yes, I am. And you say, well, the fact that you don't have it is probably rooted in this. And it's not your fault that you don't have it. It's actually because of these sort of symptoms, problems, or the lack of you having X or Y. Now, in order to get X or Y, you would do things like this. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm going to show you the reason why you're stuck or the reason why you're seeking something that you haven't received or the reason why this keeps being a mental loop in your mind is actually this, not that. Because I know if you knew what to do, you would do it. And so there's clearly some sort of gap in what it is that you think you're supposed to be doing. Let me show you why this is the right solution. And then after they read this piece, they're like, well, that was cathartic. I never thought about it from that perspective. I never realized those are the steps instead. And so now what I'm going to do is continue to consume your content, go grab that resource and go on this little breadcrumb trail of you're opening loops in my mind that only your offer can solve. And if I really want to get the how to, I might throw out a couple educational pieces here and there, of course, just to kind of try me before you buy me style. But it's going to get to the point of everything you need is inside of the offer. And I want to seed it in a way that there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I call it creating hot damn demand, to where if somebody comes into your ecosystem that's sticky and all these pieces, be them freebies, be them free posts, be them a masterclass or a live, they all kind of align to the same purpose of revealing what it is that they actually need being your offer.
I like that. That sounds, I mean, the word that comes to mind for me is personalization, like understanding what is the thing that's on somebody's mind, like what is the thing that they recognize the gap of, like, oh yeah, I do feel that, I do resonate with that, I do understand how that is something that's an issue for me, and then being able to speak directly to that, not in like a overarching education way, but in like here's what you specifically are dealing with this, because there's like a million iterations of, you know, you're struggling with confidence, but like depending on who you are, your background, all these things, like that could look completely different. So if I'm hearing you right, it's like earlier on 2018 to 2021, maybe you could get away with something that's like almost more academic, of like, here's the things that affect confidence, top 5 whatever.
Yep.
And now it has to be like, here's the thing that's affecting your confidence, and it has to be
Yeah.
spot on.
It, absolutely. So, yes. And I think a lot of times what's happening is with the confidence, it's a great example. I will work with a female entrepreneur who is so smart. She knows her stuff so well. So she's like, I don't know how to create a piece of content that doesn't give away the kitchen sink, because I either want to tell them how to fix their lack of confidence, or if I am going to try to perspective shift, I'm like, well, you're lacking confidence because it's rooted in your trauma. And I'm like, no, 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 no. She's not ready to hear that this is rooted in her trauma until you get her closer to conversion. So you're speaking a little too advanced because you're just too smart for your own good. You're in the work, you know exactly what the solution is, but we have to start at their awareness level. So if I were to interview her and say, okay, tell me what it is that she's daily, what does it look like, sound like with her lack of confidence? And she says, well, she typically works at corporate and she's at director level or above and is not getting recognized for the upcoming promotion because she's just not having confidence and owning it. And I say, okay, so tell me something specifically that's bugging her. And she says, well, she's working so hard. She's everybody's lackey. And because she's working so hard, she's lost time for herself and hasn't done her self-care routine, hasn't been to the gym and been eating healthy lately because she's burning the midnight oil and her pants are feeling a little bit tighter. And I say, great, now we have something physical. So your post is going to say, hey, do you wake up every morning and throw on that same pair of beige slacks that are cutting into your abdomen and drive to work in a huff because you're working so hard and nobody's noticing it and you're getting overlooked for X and Y? What gives? Because it's not that you're not fabulous and talented and truly doing the work and are deserved of that role. It's that you're not owning it. And here's what you would do instead to show that ownership. And here's how they would start to look at you differently. And she goes, whoa, I never thought about it that way. When you spoke in my reality, I'm now seeing that my lack of confidence is holding me back. And then from that conversation, that could be something that just gets her into your ecosystem. She opts into your free resource where you say, now let's do an audit. Where did that lack of confidence start? And then she starts to realize, oh, wow, maybe it started in childhood. And then from that breakthrough, she comes to a masterclass. And on that masterclass, it's here are the top 3 childhood traumas and how they affect us in adulthood. And then reveals that it's a lack of confidence and come into the confidence incubator. And that's the program. So it's was academic and now it's more perspective shifting, but it's also making sure we're speaking in their terms, to your point about making it tailored.
Yeah, no, that I resonate wholly with what you just described there, because that is exactly the shift that we've seen in people making quizzes, which is just a form of marketing. So like, it's got to be the same as everything else, right? And
Yeah.
it used to be like, oh, what kind of entrepreneur are you? Did really well in like 2018, 2019, maybe some of 2020. Now it's like, are you underpaid? And then that leads into this whole thing, like just like you described, but like what's on their mind is not like, oh, am I in the wrong career, or like, is my childhood issues holding me back from having a better job? No,
Yeah.
they literally just want to know, am I being paid less than that person?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's on people's minds. And if you don't address that directly, then I've never seen so many marketing campaigns go to zero in my life as the last like 2 years.
Yeah.
Literally, so many marketing campaigns that probably all fit in that bucket of like generic education actually went to zero. Like, I'll have people reach out and be like, yeah, like 1,000 people a month used to take my quiz and now zero. And I'm like, well, let me look at it. And I look at it, it's like that generic stuff. And then it's like, all right, this not going to cut it anymore. You got to be on that level where you're addressing what is on somebody's mind. Because I don't know if you'd agree with this or you have a different perspective, but kind of seems like people's tolerance for like figuring stuff out has gone to like 0.001% of what it used to be. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I used to spend time reading and trying to figure things out. Now, if you don't tell me exactly what I want right now, I will give you 0 seconds of time.
Yeah. I need you to say it in my terms at my awareness level so that I get a little breakthrough or I get a little quick hit of dopamine in some capacity so that I'm interested in you and I'm now going to go down your path because I have so many options and my attention span is shorter because I have so much TikTok content and advertorial content coming at me constantly. So if you are going to basically tap into my subconscious and get it to say, hey, pay attention, this is for us, you need to speak very specifically to what's on my mind.
Yeah, yeah, it's so fascinating. And then it requires you to just be so much sharper. I mean, if you have like a chat GPT that can do the average, then that means as a business owner, you have to be somewhere well above the average if you want anybody to pay attention to what you're doing, because otherwise everyone knows you can just go to ChatGPT and ask it for the answers and we'll
Yeah.
give you an average answer. So it's no longer interesting at all. Crazy,
That's a great
crazy.
way to describe it. Like ChatGPT is going to give you the average. So if you're not better than the average, then you're going to blend in with the ChatGPT noise.
Yeah. And I think it used to be that like you could be average and then have really great distribution, and that would get people to, click on your stuff, go through, buy whatever. Now I think you have to be well above average and you still have to be really good at distribution, because like that's another thing, right? It's like it's very hard to get in front of the right audience. It's hard to reach them where they are and know how to be in the right place at the right time in front of the right people. but you have to have both. You have to be able to speak to them with like that exact specific thing that they want. So that's really good. It's really good. Well, I appreciate this conversation. That
Yeah.
was above and beyond in terms of talking through marketing strategy. So hopefully for anybody listening, that's really helpful. If anybody wants to kind of learn more from you, what are the best places to follow or resources to go after that you have?
I would say come see me on Instagram. I'm at the social bungalow. You could go to the website too and shoot us an email if you're not an Instagrammer, but we hang out there most of our time. And whatever our latest and greatest resource is always in the link in bio. So you can grab that. I do live launches a lot. So I'm swapping out my freebies consistently per the strategies we talked about today. So if I were to say something today, it might be different in 3 weeks when you come and see it. So just come and hang out, say hey. And if you are an entrepreneur looking to scale an online based business, you can shoot me a DM and I can always help to give you some consultative advice.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks, Shannon. I appreciate this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.